So this is one of those shows I have been thinking about waking me up at night. I'm so excited because we're going to be talking about a book that just came out. And the author of that book, he's laughing in the background. You can't hear him yet, but you will in a minute. But this book is just absolutely amazing. Today, it's Uncommon Grit on Behind the Shot. Hi, once again, welcome to Behind the Shot. I'm Steve Brazill. This is the show where we try and get inside the mind of great photographers by taking a closer look behind one of their shots from conception to completion, all those stories and challenges that happen in between, and today is no exception. The stories are going to be amazing. We're going to be doing one shot, but I've got a couple of other shots to show you as well from the book that we're going to be talking about. I do want to remind you, if you want to find me anywhere, the easiest thing is stevebrazill.com for me. The podcast is behindtheshot.tv, and that is where you can find the show notes for today's episode, or for that matter, any episode. And if you want to subscribe to the podcast, either in audio or video format, if your podcast app supports video, you can find all the links to subscribe there as well at behindtheshot.tv, or you can watch the video on the YouTube channel. It's at Behind the Shot on YouTube, and be sure to hit that bell. Otherwise, you're not going to know when we do something new, some of the streaming stuff or one of the new episodes. Facebook is the one social media that I'm not generally on. So if you want to follow me online somewhere, your best bet is either Instagram or Twitter. It's at Steve Brazill. It's like Brazil, but 2 L's, or at Behind the Shot TV. Both of those work. I've kind of put my Facebook pages on hiatus. They're still there. I haven't closed them, but I'm just waiting on that. So I want to jump right into today's guest because I mentioned at the beginning, this episode, and I'm not even kidding here, has had me waking up at night. A friend of mine, Scott Heath, mentioned to me, called me up and said, "Hey, are you interested in having a Navy SEAL on the show?" I'm like, well, yeah, but it always depends on the photography, right? I mean, I want to talk to a Navy SEAL, and this month, actually, we've got Veterans Day, which is great, fits in with that. But obviously, with a photography show, it always comes down to the photography. So he sent me, from the publisher, who's a friend of his, he sent me a PDF of the book. And immediately I was taken aback, contacted the publisher. The publisher sent me the actual book, Uncommon Grit. And before I tell you what I think about the book, let me welcome the gentleman, the author, the photographer of this book, Darren McBee. I'm going to call you McBee, but it's Darren McBurnett. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me on, man. This is exciting stuff. I appreciate your time, and it's an honor to be here. So thank you very much.
Believe me, it's my honor. And let me start here. You're a veteran. It's Veterans Day this month. So, it'll either be right after this episode airs or right before, depending on what day it goes live. But first of all, thank you for your service.
I appreciate that. That's my liberal arts degree, hard at work.
Well, yeah. So I want to talk about you for a sec before we get into this book, because I told you in the green room some thoughts about the book. But first of all, you're a veteran, you're a photographer, you're a speaker, you're an ambassador, you're an author. You kind of do a little bit of everything. Let's kind of go run down that list there. 24-year SEAL career. 24 years.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm still alive, so that's shocking, which is kind of neat. So I'm happy about that.
Well, and what you're doing is, to say the least, hazardous, but you've been on numerous deployments, and you were a SEAL platoon leader. So let's start with what makes Darren want to be a SEAL? I mean, I know I read your bio, and looking at your history, you were athletic in high school. You did track, you did cross country, as I recall. You did water polo. I was a water polo goalie. But since then, you've done the Ironman type stuff and endurance racing. What causes you to think SEAL?
Well, that's a great question. And what I tell most people, I didn't really know that it existed until I was in the Navy, And so, because I had such fast swim times and run times, it's called a career counselor. What they do, just like anything else, they guide you for the perfect job to be in the Navy, because you want the benefit. The Navy wants the best out of you. You want the best you can give while you're in the Navy, and so they find a spot for you. And our micro counselor just said, "Hey, you should be, why don't you try out for Navy SEALs? Why don't you try out for SEAL teams?" And I was like, of course, I giggled a little bit because it just sounds funny. I'm like, oh, okay. This is back in '94. And I was like, okay, well, what do they do? And he was like, well, they swim all day and scuba dive. I was like, well, well, who doesn't want to do that?
Yeah, exactly. And they teach you.
Because all you think, all I'm thinking about is swimming in the pool, doing laps, like in water polo and everything, and you're swimming in triathlons and, and then scuba diving. So you think of like Nassau and, Panama City or Jamaica. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can't believe they have that job. I'm signing up for that. So I did. And then I ended up at basic under demolition seal training. And I convinced myself, I was like, wow, I have been totally bamboozled. This has nothing to do with anything what he said. And so there I am, with a bunch of other guys.
Well, but here's what's interesting to me. So 24 years as a Navy SEAL, you're obviously athletic, right? So you've got that. But SEAL training in and of itself is secretive to a great extent, right? A lot of people don't know what happens really in SEAL training. It's come out in pieces, and there was a great documentary actually on SEAL training. But that's kind of where my introduction to you is your photography with the SEAL training, but you are an award-winning photographer. You've got clients such as Nike, Nat Geo, Fox and Friends, Rolling Stone, CBS SEAL Team, which, makes sense. And the movie Act of Valor.
Yeah, which is fun.
Say again?
Yeah. That was. It's kind of fun, man. That was.
I guess my question is how. I don't even see the connection between SEAL and photographer. How does that happen?
Yeah, it's not even common. It's like, why don't you just tack like, blogger and food taster on there? It just doesn't
restaurant
fit,
critic,
But that's exactly. I'm restaurant critic. I'm a world concierge and blogger. But no, I'm not any of those. It's just it doesn't fit. But it just happened, and I wish I can go into like the big lengths of how that happened. But long story short is I was just in a moment where I thought that, wow, I needed to take a picture of this. And that was after 10 years of being in SEAL teams deployed to like Kosovo, Liberia, Iraq, Afghanistan. And the ratio is usually 5 to 2. That's 5 years deploying and 2 years at a shore rotation where you're at home more. Your head is at your home bed a lot more. You go into advanced training. You elevate yourself and become more of a tactical leader. And you need time to do that before you go back out again. And I was out at Yuma, Arizona, teaching military free fall. And I just, out there, you're up there, 16,000 feet at 5 o'clock in the morning, a ramp opens up and all you see is the whole desert. It's like red, really yellow, orange. And of course, I'm already a videographer. And what that means is like, you have to video your students. So, because they have to see what they're doing wrong. So I was a video guy. So I had to go through all the training. So I've been there for a year. I was like military freefall jump master, basic, military freefall instructor, examiner, video. I had over 1,000 jumps. I had 1,000. Matter of fact, I had 1,008 jumps by the time I put a camera on my head to start doing photography. When I wanted to do it, even the military staff was like, "Do we want to put what on your head?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's how I want to take pictures of stuff." But I remember looking at my student and going out there. It's like, "Man, this is freaking beautiful. Maybe we should take a picture." And he's looking at me, he's scared to death. And I'm like, "Oh, there's a green light. Go." And he jumps out and I go out with him. But I knew it's like I wanted to take a picture of that, but that path to take that picture was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And and that just dove me into learning photography. And that was a whole nother that's a whole nother journey, just learning that. I mean, I remember because I'm self-taught with photography. And when I started learning in 2007, everything was digital photography. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Because I'd Google photography and then digital. And then what happened, it was two different things. It was every time I did Google something about photography, digital darkroom would show up. And I'm like, great. Now I have to learn two things? What the hell? Oh, Jesus, this is taking forever. And so I was that guy. I would go to Barnes & Noble and I would send my girls off to the kids section. I'd go to the digital photography section. I'm literally sitting there in a little tiny chairs at Barnes & Noble with a digital photography book with my SEAL Team 2 dive logbook from all my last dives from like We had to sketch out everything, tides, currents, what ships we were hitting, fold the page back and like, okay, all right, white balance, and I'll like write it down and take notes.
Taking notes.
And then put the book back because I couldn't afford to put it back, and go back to the house. I mean, that's how I learned. And I learned backwards. Okay. I know this is pretty long, but I learned backwards because I couldn't afford anything. I'm in the military. I have 2 kids. I'm unhappily married. So that means I'm obviously broke. And so I'm just sitting there, and I literally had to learn for about 6 months. And I learned the digital darkroom first. I learned, I would sit there. I got an old version of learning Photoshop. It was like $5 on eBay. I bought it, and I remember putting it in my old Mac. I mean, that's my old PC, loading it up, and I had these work files, and that's how I learned. I learned backwards.
But what's interesting
I learned how to
is
do histograms.
To me, what's interesting is you just said histograms. That's teaching you the technical side. But what's fascinating about this book to me is, and this is the book for people to know, this is hands down one of the most powerful, and I have a ton of them here, right? This is one of the most powerful, it's a photography book, but it's not. There's a lot of stuff in there that Darren goes through on the process and SEALs in general and his history and how things progressed. And references to the band Korn, which we were talking about before we started recording.
Yeah.
It's one of the most powerful books I've ever seen photography-wise, but here's what's interesting. You could sit in Barnes & Noble all day long and not get anything on composition. And what I found as I went through this book was compositionally, is that a word? Composition-wise? I don't know.
Is that a word?
the art of composition that you employ in this book is literally second to none. I'm not sure I've ever seen in this type of photography, which is somewhat photojournalistic, the compositional skill of capturing something unfolding in front of you, even though you know the subject, that I've ever seen. When you, I guess let's go there first. I want to get into your motivational speaking and get into the shot, but I'm intrigued by this. Where did that come from? Where did you learn composition from? Because your eye is brilliant, dude.
Well,
brilliant.
Oh, I don't know. I just see things, but what you said actually is really, really fascinating to me. Just the fact that I failed composition. So I'm just going on just a real tidbit, which is hilarious. I decided maybe later on I should get some 3 letters behind my name, besides SEAL. And I decided to be go to the Professional Photographer Association, Certified Professional Photographer process.
PPA, yeah.
And then, I decided to go do that. So I went to Dallas for 3 days. They did this you should already know this stuff, but we're going to give you a refresher sort of thing. So I passed, by the way, got a 77. So I knew a lot of stuff, but when I came back, it was composition that I failed. I failed every aspect. I think I got like a 3. I got 3% on that because I didn't know. I mean, the questions they were asking was like, they'd show you a picture and it's like, what's the eye path compositional layout of this? And it'd be like a boy with a baseball, a teddy bear back. And I would literally look at that and I'm like, I have no freaking clue. So I just guess. I don't know the ball. I don't know. I would know. And I missed all of them.
Somehow,
so when you come back compositionally,
even though you can't see it, go ahead.
Yeah, I just can't be taught. I don't think it can be taught. I think it has in my mind when I went through. That's just me personally, because obviously I failed it. But when I'm photographing things, especially SEAL training, because first of all I went through as a SEAL and I was a SEAL instructor. I know what to look for. Not too much to look for. It's like I remember the things that sucked, and I remember the things that being a student, I always wondered what we like if my mind's eye went out and took a photograph of me doing this. And the whole compositional and how I photographed this, I wanted you to look at it as if you were in the training and you're looking left and you're looking right and you're looking forward and you're looking up. Okay. You are a student looking through this training. And that's the way I wanted to portray it because I didn't want it because anyone can stand there If they see something cool, they can take pictures of it. It's like, okay, you don't really know if taking picture of it looks cool to you, but I know how to photograph it because I've been there and I know. So that's why a lot of them are black and white for a reason, because in the morning when you're doing log PT, that haze gray is over you. You got sand in your eyes and everything is gray and dark.
But
when you're underwater doing all these evolutions. Yeah.
You have an ability, though. What you just described is storytelling, right? You know the story. And you just suddenly put, and by the way, it works, right? You put the viewer of that photograph in that situation. It's a landscape photographer's dream that when you look at their photo, you can imagine yourself standing in the mountains. Well, the shot we're going to talk about today wasn't comfortable to picture myself there, but I 100% did, right? This whole path for you, mainly the SEAL stuff, but your life experiences has led you to being an ambassador for the Uncommon Grit Foundation, which is a nonprofit you started, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, we did.
Tell me about Uncommon Grit Foundation.
Me and my wife started that. Uncommon Grit Foundation was something we came up with as the years have come. Remember, this book took 4 years to make after we got done and retired and moved on, because I had so many photographs and I don't know. It's hard to describe it. All I can say is like, I have all the images. I see it in my head, what I want to create out of it. And then I create the image. But anyway, it started to create its own, it created its own following. It created its own brand along the way, as it's part of me. And so, going on Instagram and then getting I think I got 93,000 followers, got verified on all the social media aspects, one on Fox and Friends, and then everywhere I would go, people would identify me with, the photographs and being a SEAL and Uncommon Grit. And then all of a sudden I was like, you know what, this makes sense. And so we just created the foundation. And what the foundation does is we just, we try to take care of what's one of the number one thing in the SEAL teams is take care of those who are taking care of you. And that's what it's all about. It's like, you take those two words, uncommon and grit, which is like uncommon, which is out in the ordinary, and grit is like characteristics. Right. And it's like, hey, what's uncommon characteristics? And that's all the people that want to move forward into danger and protect our country. And we don't really see them, like police officers, firefighters, military, you don't know their names, you don't know their
doctors
faces,
and nurses,
but they have families,
right?
And they're out there protecting you. Doctors and nurses. Yeah. Everybody, first responders, they're taking care of us. And for the most part, people not turn a blind eye, but they just go about their lives, and they know they're out there, but understand that they have families too. And when they die, it's like, make sure that we take care of those because they took care of us. And so that's what the foundation's all about. I
love that. Uncommon Grit Foundation. And all of this, again, has led you to be a motivational speaker. You've spoken at a company I've done a ton of business with, CDW, AIG, Budweiser, Rite Aid, Hilton Hotels, and there's a bunch more. But the book, all of this leads you to this book that you said takes 4 years to do. Excuse me. And here's what's interesting about this book, okay? The description on the website is, it's an unprecedented look at SEAL training, the toughest training in the military and the world, from the vantage point of somebody who lived through it. But what's fascinating to me is, my father was military, he was Air Force. And I've known about SEALs, and I've known some SEALs growing up, and the training was always very, very secretive. Not in the sense of secretive. It's one of those, first rule of Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club, right? Most people will not talk about the specifics of the training in SEAL training, but your book shows aspects of SEAL training that are, I'm trying to think of words here, because again, this thing's been waking me up at night trying to figure out these words, and I still can't. It's both inspiring and uncomfortable as hell at the same time, right? In one single photograph, you're like, wow, right? All at the same time in this beautiful way, composed in this artistic way. So I guess the question I want to start with is, because this isn't all you photograph. So before we get into this picture in the book, I don't want people to look at this and just think that's all he shoots, right? How do you describe what you photograph? As a photographer, right? You don't ever get to talk about your photography as much as you do your SEAL history.
No.
So tell me, how do you see yourself as a photographer? How do you describe yourself as a photographer?
I you know what? You're right. It's like, for all these years, now that this book is, being actually released and out there, now I'm getting photography questions. I'm like, man, I better figure out how I'm going to answer this stuff because I never talked about it before ever. It's like, if you take the world of photography, I'm like, I've been like out here on my own. It's like, even Little Red Riding Hood didn't take this path, at all. It's like, I'm the only one. It's like, I started out with free fall, and then obviously was a seal, and then photograph seal. It's like, I'm the only one on this path. I mean, there's millions of photographers, and, but there's only one that's done this path. And so it's been by myself, and I've never really had any photographer friends. I never really got to talk to anybody about it because I've been surrounded by SEALs, and right. So that's that my Chismo Navy SEAL thing. But then I get done and I go home and like, oh, it's like, man, boy, I screwed up on that aperture. That was dumb, So it's
not just me.
I'm very, very unorthodox. No, I'm very unorthodox. Okay. I do have one photography friend, and I remember showing him one of my favorite photographs that I took at SEAL training. He goes, well, it breaks some rules, but it works. And I remember looking at him, there's rules? Who made up these stupid rules? It's like, this is what it's I like it. There, done. That's the rule. I like it. That's the rule. And so that to me, so I'm very, very, very unorthodox when I look at things. And because I'm very unorthodox how I look at things is the fact that I really embrace imperfection 100%. I embrace little things that go wrong here and there because I find art in anything. I find for some reason I had that unique ability just to look at things and see patterns, see things that don't match, see things that's color that's not supposed to be there that makes a scene. I can see it. And so when I go into it. But
I don't think that's as much. I suppose it could be. I don't think that's as much a trainable skill, right? I think that's in you.
Yeah, I see. It's not like that creepy guy in The Sixth Sense. I see dead people. It's like I just see stuff. I just see it. I don't know. But here's the thing, and I got to be honest with you. And it goes back to when I started photography because, like I said, I learned digital darkroom and how to photograph backwards. Okay, so I learned all the analog stuff. Right. I mean, it's like when I finally got my first camera was a Canon 30D. The first thing I did, I switched the back of the LCD screen to show the histogram. That's what I looked at because that's what I understood. And I understood numbers. I understood highlights. I understood midtones. I understood the dark tones. I understood what it is and read the piles of tiles, 0, 255. So when I look at a scene, I knew how it was going to look in the histogram. And that's when I knew to go in and set something and do exposure compensation to set it one thing or another, or go manual, because when I was skydiving, I didn't have that opportunity because the whole landscape is changing because I'm going 135 miles an hour. So I just set TV and set it on, okay, I don't want this to be 800. I'm going to set the ISO at 400. And then whatever happens. If I go through a cloud, I know that I can take a shot. I can reach up and I can do the top dial 1 to the right or 2 to the right, depending what I set it to change that aperture, go up 2 apertures or low 2 apertures while I'm skydiving, then come back down. But that's what I knew. And so I know I went off on a tangent right there, but I see stuff, but because I learned backwards instead of forwards, because so many people have a target. Hey, look, I took this picture. Look at my LCD screen. I'm like, hey, good for you. But for me, it's like show me the numbers first. When I see a scene, it's like, okay, I know how this is going to look. I know how to create what I want to see. And a lot of times, believe it or not, I found myself using all the modes that people told you not to use.
Right.
I found some of the best work I did with center weighted priority. People are like, what because it's one of those things that you go on and people just don't really talk about it. Like, I'll just follow, though your settings are fine. This is average. I'm like, well, what does that mean? What does center weighted mean? What does that mean? It's like you have all this is evaluative, but when I started shooting example center weighted, I'm like, I got a whole new picture every time. And I thought, to me, that was fascinating. That was kind of like the art of photography, is experiment with what you have, and it's like, okay.
And so, I will say, people don't experiment.
Against the grain in a lot of things.
people don't experiment with things like metering modes. Like I'm periodically in spot metering or center weighted, and a lot of times I'm in evaluative or matrix metering, which all kinds of brings us to this photo, because the photo we're going to talk about today is insane in subject matter and in photography skill. So let me first of all just remind everybody, you can go to the website. It's behindtheshot.tv. If you go there, I've got a little bit that I wrote about Darren. I've got links to all of Darren's, online presence, and I've got a gallery of images from this book so that you can kind of see what he does and then go to those links. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please, if you like it, give it a thumbs up and be sure to hit the bell. Subscribing isn't enough. Just hit that subscribe bell as hard as you can. And that makes things a little bit easier, which then brings us to this. This image is insane to me. I should ask, is there a name? Do you name your images?
No, I just have them categorized. That's it. It's like, okay, this is like saying, well, this is CTT, this is pull work, this is drown proofing, this is knot tying, this is 50 meter, this is log PT. You get it. So that's all I have it under. But for that one, it's it just everything made sense with that one to me.
And it does, by the way. Let me, for those of you on
when it comes
audio,
to drown proofing,
I'm going to try and describe this picture like I always do, and I'm going to start here. Impact. This image will affect you, right? When you see this image under whatever circumstances you see it under, this shot will affect you. It's a black and white photo, and it's underwater in a swimming pool. When I say underwater in a swimming pool, it looks like you're about halfway down the pool. You can see the light reflecting in the rippling water on the top, and you can see those shadows from that rippling water being reflected on the bottom of the pool, and you see the tiles in the bottom of the pool as well. You can see windows, underwater windows on the far side of the pool. And the only time I've really seen a lot of underwater windows on a pool was when I played water polo. Some pools have windows underneath for cameras, like at colleges and stuff, for that type of thing. In the pool, you see, best count, probably about 10 SEAL trainees, and they're floating in the water. They're floating at different levels. Some of them are almost at the bottom. Some of them, their heads are out of the water. Some of them are kind of in between, right? And some of them are way under the water. And now the uncomfortable part. Their ankles are tied with rope together, and their hands are tied behind their backs. So it's not just like they're floating and swimming and having fun, right? They're tied up and sinking in the water. And here's where I want to touch on composition. I don't normally do this early, but I got to do this. Center frame. So you've got all these swimmers, right? And you see some of them just legs, some of them heads are out of the water, some of them full bodies. But all the swimmers, pretty much, the left side, not so much. All the swimmers kind of overlap other swimmers or are affected by the light or the shadow. There is one swimmer, about a third of the way back, underwater completely, bubbles of air coming out, looking right down the barrel of Darren's lens. I mean, right, looking right at you during this. Almost as though you looked at him and went, over here, look over here, like I would do to a band member, right? So let's start, just get the technical out of the way. I've got the EXIF data on this if people are curious, and tell me if this sounds wrong, but it was a Canon 5D Mark II with a 14 millimeter 2.8 Mark II, which I love that lens. And you shot it in aperture priority at 7.1, which gave you an exposure of 1/500th of a second, ISO 400. Of course, you're at 14 millimeters. White balance is auto. So technical stuff out of the way, let's dive in here. Are you under the water with them, or are you behind a window on this side?
Oh, I'm underwater with them, man. I'm a SEAL, so I swim there with them.
So what's your camera in?
And I had an aquatic. It's one of the Aquatica lenses. So the Aquatica housing. Have you seen those? It's like they're like surfers use a lot of them, and actually it's a base for a lot of underwater photography. They'll put a lot of arms, and it's just kind of like the base model. What I did was, because we're SEALs, we improvised. So I put Draeger dive weights. Draeger dive weights are little bags of weights that go in our rebreather to trim us out in the water when we're going with when we're diving, and it's like it's closed circuit, so there's no air, and so we have weights on there that kind of balances out when we're swimming. So I put those, I duct taped them to the side, so that kind of kept the camera just neutrally buoyant, which is what I really wanted. And so when I'm down there, I'm like, yeah, I just go up, take a breath, and come down. You know, but I'm looking, and that's kind of what I do. It's like once again, it's you know, when you're behind something protecting yourself, you're never going to get the shot. You never will. I think a long time ago for Time or Life magazine, I think Joe McNally did a few pieces. And yeah, I remember one of the shots from a long time ago, a conference I saw, was like, you know, he was looking through the glass, you can see, and it was like, okay, you know, that's one thing about knowing your subject photographic and taking pictures of something. It's like, okay, I was in there with them because it's drown proofing, and then we do a lot of things in the water. And this, to me, it's how you become a Navy SEAL. It's like these evolutions with the 50-meter underwater swim, drown proofing, underwater knot tying. These are your core test gates that you have to pass, and drown proofing is one of them. Then drown proofing evolution takes about 20 minutes. And so your hands or feet are tied. Your hands are tied behind your back. Your feet are tied. We're going to throw you in 10 foot of water. First of all, you have to swim 100 meters back. That's 4 laps, 100 yards.
With your hands and your ankles
with
tied?
With your hands and feet tied. Yep. Which can be done. Once you get back, you bob. It's called bobbing. Okay, bobbing is how you relax, and this is where you really start to understand where you're going to panic or not. Because all you do is take a breath, you exhale, you go down to the bottom, you push off, you come up, you take another breath of air, and then you exhale on your way down. And then that buoyancy thing, they come down, you go back, and then you actually relax. You get into a rhythm. He's like, all the way down, push off, take a breath of air, exhale, go all the way down. Then you're starting to get in a rhythm, you're getting comfortable. And then you have to float for 5 minutes. So now you take a breath, and now you just got to float. So you're just floating. You just learn how to float. That's where you're keeping your lungs at least 3/4 full of air, but relaxing at the same time. And then when you get done with that, you do a couple flips, forward flips, back to bobbing. And then we just throw your mask in the water. You go down. You have to go down there. You have to lick it up with your head and put it in your teeth and come up. And you're just like, I feel fine. You know, permission to be done with the evolution. They're like, yeah, come on in. You swim in, and your partner grabs you, pulls you out, and that's what it is. And so the whole thing is your ability to relax in the water. Can you think in the water? Can you problem solve in the water? And can you actively participate in saving your own life in the water? That's the whole point of the evolution. And so photographing that was a lot of, to me, that's what I want to portray. I want to portray like this is what this is. It's like people can say drown proofing, but no, this is what it is. I want you to see a guy. All right. His feet are tied. His feet are tied. His hands are tied. But also there's a person's foot right here letting you know his feet are really tied. It's kind of like, yeah, what you're seeing is actually correct. Look at that. His feet are actually tied. There's a knot. And I actually sharpened it with high pass sharpening just to make sure you really, really saw it. You know, and then everybody in the back is kind of like they're all doing the same thing, but you can kind of, it's just, in my mind, that was that perfect shot where he's looking right at me. And the thing I don't do is people ask me, did you ask the student to do anything? It's like when I was in training, it's like, I never ask anybody to do anything.
You don't want to interrupt their focus. This guy's focusing on not drowning.
Nope.
Right?
Yeah. I don't want anybody. It's like sometimes I'm there. I never went into people's faces to do anything. Because I want them to go through the training, and we want to go through the training. And so for me, I was always like offset doing something. And in the water, your eyes are closed anyway. It's chlorine. They can't really see anyway. So I was just sitting down at the bottom. I'm just like, okay, what would be a good scene? You know, and of course it's patterns. I'm big into patterns. So for that one, I'm looking at the patterns. I'm looking at things that really, but you know, when I had this guy coming right next to me and his foot kept on coming up and down, I'm like, okay. This might be good. So I just went back and, you know, came back and waiting. And I have a lot of drown proofing, but it's like some of them don't really sync up. But like I said, I'm looking for patterns. But the whole overall thing is, it's like I just wanted the image do you see is like you are really drown proofing. And so this is what it is. And you see everyone drown proof. You got the guy right in front of you, and then you got the feet right next to you, showing you that it's like, yeah, their feet are really tied. And black and white because. Yeah.
Go. Because that's what I was going to ask was, did you know you were going to do this in black and white when you shot it?
Yeah, a lot of the drown proofing I do in black. Anything that I did in the pool evolution, you'll notice I gravitated to black and white because this is where, like I said, it goes back to me from being a student at SEAL training, is the fact that you do all these evolutions with your eyes closed. Okay, because obviously you don't want the chlorine to burn your eyes the whole freaking time. So, and that's the way you have to relax. And so, when I was a student, when I was doing that, I always imagined it being dark. Number one, because I projected my mind's eye out, looking in on what I thought I looked like. And I knew it's dark because your eyes are freaking closed. And that to me is, pardon me, that's how I look at a lot of the black and white photos is that's how you kind of see things when you're doing it. There's really no color, where your eyes are shut. And then we do open them up. It's kind of white. You can't really see anyway. And so you go back down and you go back up, and like I said, there's really not a lot of color. And that just wanted, that's how I thought that I would look as a black and as your external eye looking in. I know it sounds kind of weird, but I'm a weird dude, and that's how I look at things. And that's how I look at that.
Completely makes sense to me. I mean, absolutely makes sense to me because, and here's the thing, you touched on something that I think is really important too, because you said you can see the patterns, right? By making it black and white, by removing, in this particular case, the color would have been a distraction almost, right? By removing the color, you've emphasized those patterns. And the smallest patterns in this. So first of all, the separation of height of the trainees. The guy looking right down your lens is equidistant from the top of the pool, from the top of the water to the bottom of the pool. I mean, he's like floating dead center. Other people, the legs in front of you, you see just from mid-thigh down. Other people, you can tell their heads are out. Other people, you can tell their heads are touching the top, but they're completely underwater. That up and down movement adds layers of texture, but then you have that going back as well, because now you have foreground subjects, midground subject, background subject, just like a landscape photographer would shoot. And here's something I also noticed too. So the first row, if you look at the tiles on the floor of this picture, you have the tiles going from you, going back, you get perspective. So now you have leading lines. We're talking about the rules that don't exist, right? You have leading lines in there. But then you have the horizontal lines in the first row of the first row of tile horizontally is pretty level. But then as it goes back and you see the back edge of the pool, there's a slight tilt to this picture. Or at least perceived slight tilt to the picture based on it's also weighted because you see the right side of the pool, you don't see the left side of the pool. That adds tension and discomfort to the picture that it's slightly askew, right? So many good composition choices. It still amazes me that they didn't like your composition choices at PPA. PPA, get it together, man. So let's go here. And by the way, there is some lag on this connection, folks. So if we step on each other, we apologize. It's Zoom, right? COVID. So lighting, you don't use because you can use underwater lights when you're scuba and shooting fish or coral or whatever. This is natural light entirely. Okay.
Yeah,
so I want to talk to you about
the only time I ever used. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. The only time you used what? There's that lag.
The only time I ever used flash was there's that lag. The only time I ever used flash was Grinder PT, the 4 a.m. PT. That's the only time I ever used flash. I'm not a big fan of flash. It's probably because I'm not very good at it. But I use the light that's around me because it's a lot easier. Maybe because I'm lazy and I haven't really learned studio flash or flash, but I got really good at speed lights. But I just like the natural light, and that was it, because the natural light gives you when the natural light came switched from the pool, it gave you all that texture on the pool of like the reflection of the ripples on the ground. And so that, to me, I like that texture. And plus the pool is really, really dirty. I mean, it's actually a grimy pool. So you can see all that dirt down there too, especially when you do in black and white.
Well, and you mentioned Joe McNally earlier, who, in my opinion, may be the best lighting technician we have working in photography today. And by the way, if you ever get a chance to see Joe McNally speak live, an amazing public presenter. He did a thing, I think it was a year or so ago, last year, might have been 2019, at Photoshop World. He did the keynote, and it's just, I when it was over, I wanted to go, no, more, give me more. So let's talk post-production here for a second, and then I want to get into some of the other images from the book, but post-production wise, the contrast here is super intense. Now, you mentioned you did use some sharpening on the knot, for example, right? Some unsharp masking type thing on the knot, the front knot, to really emphasize, yes, your eyes are not lying to you.
Yep.
But the contrast here, intense. Every choice that you made, I'm going to go back to PPA again. When they said, what is the path of the viewer's eye and taking it through, every choice you made here increases the viewer's tension and attention. So what's your process when you shoot a shot like this? Because I'm guessing you shot it in color, right? Photoshop, Lightroom, Nik plugins. What's your editing process and workflow?
Believe it or not, that I'm about ready to blow you away again. At least I hope so. My like I said, remember, I worked backwards, and there was a time that I actually passed the Photoshop ACE exam for CS3. I mean, I'd be in the airplane, like literally the airplane. Okay, getting ready to jump. I think when I was like a lot of times you're lagging you video and. There's usually 4 passes or in a cost. There's 2 cabs or king. There's 3 passes. Pass has 10 guys going. I'd actually sit there, pull out my jumpsuit and pull out my cards and like review and go in. And so what I found out about Photoshop was simply it's kind of like the Walmart of editing. Okay, there's a little bit of everything in there. Every little thing is in there. And I always thought when I first started, I had to know all of it to really do stuff. And then and I was pretty good with it. But then it got to the point where as I moved on with my photography career and SEAL career, kind of like being a SEAL, it's like, well, you don't need all this crap that you just got issued. You need bullets, you need water, you need comms, you need frags, and you need and more bullets for your AW guy. And that's it. And so that's kind of like Photoshop. I was like, what do I really need here? I know this stuff, but I'm getting consumed with time thinking I have to do all this stuff. And then as I got smarter and how I wanted to do, once I had that vision, it's like I know exactly what I need to do. The first thing I do is open up Photoshop. I take the one that I categorize them all in Adobe Bridge, what Evolution was. I pull it in Camera Raw. I set my resolution at 1998. I set the resolution at 400 because when I have prints, when I'm printing them out, that's the resolution that me and my printer have actually worked with. Because you can change that whatever you want. I mean, to me, that's what worked for us. And then I just go in. I'll go in and then I want this in black and white. So there's so many choices you can do with black and white. And there's lots of plugins that you talked about, Nik's on one. I mean, just exposure. There's so many things you can do that. And in my mind, that just gave you so many other choices. And to me, it's like, okay, you have to have the shot in your head. Say, how do I do this? And a lot of times to me, it was basic. I changed the mode to lab. I copy and paste the lab layer on there. Turn it back, turn that into an overlay layer, bam, bam, bam. And so now I have this beautiful little layer, and then I reduce the noise, and then I'll go in and reduce noise again, but I'll take away JPEG artifacts on the blue layer, go back, and then now I have a nice clean photo, and then I just dodge and burn.
Do you shoot in JPEG?
Straight up old-fashioned dodge and burn. Raw. Everything's in raw. And so I'm just building it myself. And
dodging and burning. Dodging and burning is one of those things I don't think people do enough. I do a critique show, an image critique show, and one of the things I tell people is you need to massage the light. And people crack up I use that term, but it's true. You need to shape the light with dodging and burning and put the focus, where you want it to be. So this particular image, aside from converting it to black and white, doing obviously some unsharp masking, anything unusual you would have done to this, or this was pretty much a straightforward black and white conversion to you?
No, you'll be that's it. It's like I found that the more I know, the more I photograph, that my post processing just takes shorter and shorter amount of time. That's it, because pretty much all the edits I can do now are what I want the end state to be. I can do in Camera Raw. It's like that dialogue work flow has gotten so easy. I mean, you used to be able to do a lot of things, but now they have all sorts of good it's just so easy. And so when they have dehaze now, they got like texture. I mean, just they're just it's such a good
Right.
Starting point for your image. It's like you clean it up, you set everything you did, the resolution set, you can crop, and like, okay, bam. And then I'll sit in the Photoshop. And then of course, one of the things I do is take away all the lens artifacts that you find that the camera always has, no matter how much you clean the sensor with. So I'll go in there and clone stamp and heal and get all the rest of the garbage that's in there, because when you're photographing SEAL training, I can't tell you how many. I mean, I had like 3 cameras, because one of them was always being at the shop getting the sand caked out of it, you know.
Yeah.
But
well,
you clean all those things up. But a lot of people forget that.
That's one of the things I want to touch on really quick. I want to show some other pictures of the book, and while we're not going to dive deep into them. People just get the book, trust me. But as I show these, there is a question, an overriding question that I have had about this entire project, right? You are taking pictures of a military endeavor, a military training that up until now has been pretty much kept under wraps. Like I say, I can't remember the name of it, but there was a fantastic documentary on SEAL training. But still, you're taking pictures of SEAL training. How did they allow you to do this? One. And 2, when you went to them and said, because I'm guessing you had to go to them and say, oh, by the way, all those pictures I took, I'm making a book, right? What was that process like to get permission to use these pictures or to even take these pictures? And as an example,
yeah, that's
I've got the shot up right now of three guys in scuba gear, fins in their hands, and they're doing push-ups covered in sand. What's it like to get permission for this?
Well, that's a great question too, and that's actually even a longer bundle, but I'll put it as succinctly as I can. I was asked to do it because I like I say in the book, it's leadership that had a vision, and my reputation as a photographer kind of followed me throughout my SEAL career. You know, I'll deploy, and there's one point in my career I didn't even touch the camera for 5 years. I think from like 2011 to 12, 13, 14, like 2010 all the way to 2015. I never touched the camera because I was busy deploying. But I had one of the commanding officers that I knew and I worked with Active Valor with, because I did all the air scenes, told me that, hey, SEAL was the SEAL compound, our Spec War Center was doing another recruiter video, and they wanted to update all the photos around the compound. And this was a job for what's called the scout team. Okay, scout team is basically a command within the SEAL teams that whole job is to recruit. They're kind of like recruiters. They're finding people that can make it through buds, or out there seeing people who want to be buds. They're actually recruiting, and that PAO's office, in the JAG's office, public affairs officer, that's what they do. And so for me, it was to come in there. It's like, all right, this is what we're going to do. And so I took that. I was like, all right, I'll take pictures and shoot video for you, whatever you want to do, man. And there's anything about a book or anything like that. We're just updating the command photographs and doing something for the command that they wanted to do. And the leadership had a really good vision for it. It's like, hey, we want to inspire people. We want to incorporate heritage of what we've been doing, because it's the same training we've been doing for the last 50 years. Nothing's changed with it. And so, a lot of it's out there.
Changed,
the Discovery Channel did the big one.
Mm-hmm. Right, the Discovery Channel one, right. Nothing may have changed with it, but you've managed to capture it in a way. Like as you were talking, I was switching through the pictures as well. And you've managed to capture it in such a way as to humanize it, but not discount the incredible difficulty of it or the importance of it, right? You kept all of that. One of the ones I wanted to touch on from a composition point of view was the one where they're carrying the log and the hands are up, but between the triangle of a guy's head and his arm, you see another guy's eye that's in focus. That's composition, my friend. That is awesome. Just awesome. And then the other one, if I can find it, I think it was that one right there, is the one where the same guys that are tied up, but you're underwater and they're sitting on the edge of the pool and his toe is ripped up. Right? It's these little bits, right? And you're doing this in a scenario where these guys are, regardless of how they're trained to be relaxed, right? These are not normal human environments for most people. And they're difficult and stressful environments, no matter, again, how much you try and stay calm. It is a stressful environment intentionally. So my last question to you is, as somebody who has gone through this yourself, has photographed it, knowing what that stress is like, and even though you're not going through it at that moment, everybody has empathy and you see them, even if you just have a camera in your hand, and you can feel for what they're going through. So there's stress both ways, right?
Yep.
The camera looks both ways. What's your tip for photographing and getting that shot in a stress environment like this?
Oh man, I just, first of all, just stay out of the way. That's number one, and just let it happen. But number two, it's like, you got to just know what you're looking for. If being a SEAL, you're always in stressful situations, and SEAL training, like every day is freaking stressful. And so, but like I said, I remember those evolutions. I know what it's like to go through those evolutions, and I know what part that I'm stressed out about that evolution. And I know what guys are freaked out about. And so it's like, kind of like it's like, I know that they're going to be stressed out about this. So I'm going to hit this spot right here because I know what they're looking. And of course, I can see it in their eyes too. You can see it in their eyes. You can see that one that's like kind of like that moment. Yeah. And you're like, okay, I'm going to focus on him a little bit, but I'm going to do it off to the side. I don't want him to see me, and sort of thing. And so that's pretty much how it is. But like I've led not a high speed, but high risk, stressful life for the last, 24 years. And so to me, it's normal. That's our normal every day. But also you hit on another thing about every image has emotion in it. It's either calm, silent, or in your face. This is straight up emotion. And that's what I want to show, because that's what SEAL training is. It's young men out there that are making the impossible possible. And for the most part, if you read a bunch of Navy SEAL books, you watch SEAL movies or anything like that, they always show how hard training was. And like, this was like really hard, but they don't really go in depth. They just show or talk about how cold they were, how miserable it was, or their guys get together. And like, I know Marcus Luttrell with The Lone Survivor did a really good job with that. So did Rob O'Neill. He's the guy that killed Bin Laden. He's one of my best friends in his book. He said, but they all do. It's like all SEALs that come out of the book, they always start out with SEAL training, but it's to me, it's you just can't visualize it unless you're actually there. And so when I'm photographing, I want you to see what no one's going to show you. I'm going to show you how hard this is. I'm going to show you why 90% of 180 lads that join a class, and they're picked from all over the country, like college for football, are come to this class. There's 6 classes a year, so it's not a lot. Why do 90% of them fail? This is why. You know, like that guy's toe. I mean, his toe was to the bone.
These are recruited
like
people.
It was literally.
These are people recruited just for this. Yeah. And don't make it. And this one shot, you've got a shot of a bunch of guys standing in shorts under rain.
Yeah.
And this shot to me kind of sums up the book, really. Because you have a guy on the left that looks like he is shivering to death and about to go ring that bell.
Yeah.
You have a guy in the back that looks like he's full of muscles and he's going to make it through on pure testosterone, right? You've got the guy on the far right who just looks like he's just going to make it. He doesn't even know how. And then you got the guy, and you got a bunch of other guys in the back.
Yeah.
But then you got the guy in the middle who looks like he's just standing, waiting in line for coffee with a slight head cock to him, a slight head tilt. And he's looking at the camera like, what else do you got? Right? That's it.
Exactly.
That's the book to me.
That was one of my favorite photos. So that photo right there, that's Hell Week. Okay, that is Wednesday morning of Hell Week. Now, our Hell Week goes 5.5 days, 24/7, Sunday evening all the way to Friday afternoon, 24/7, 3 hours of sleep, and you go evolution after evolution after evolution. That's why you notice all their legs are swollen. And you're not allowed to sit down. You have to go. You even stand while you eat in Hell Week, and so there's no sleep. Evolution after evolution. That's like Wednesday morning is kind of like that big that's where you shift. If you make it through, if you get it to Wednesday morning, you're pretty much going to make it to Friday. And that's kind of like the rule. Wednesday's that big crux day.
Hump
It's
day.
like, oh my God, are you going to make it? And these guys, and then those guys, and that's actually the decon, that's in our decon station, the CTT. That's actually cold, but it's 52-degree water coming down on them, which is actually warm at 52 degrees because it was like, 40 degrees on the outside. So they're actually warm. But the guy in the front, I love his look. It's like, yeah, whatever, and other guys are just freezing their butts off. And all those guys made it. They're all hard,
he looks comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, he's waiting in line to get a pumpkin scone, man. He's like, all right, what else you got? Take a latte. And the other guy's just freezing, but you don't know who's going to make it. That's the whole point. You don't. It's just a war between your ears when it comes to SEAL training. It's like, what do you have mentally? Because physically it sucks, but can you keep going? Can you do it? And I love that photo. I wanted that to be the cover photo. I really, really did. But as I started to go through it, the cover photo I have now is one I ended up ultimately choosing because that literally, it was overall the image that the command that we worked with, like the PAO's office and all the commanding officers and the Warcom JAGs, was like, this is the image which originally was the focus point of this whole project, was heritage. Right. And that's what it was. It's like, that's heritage. That's guys out there swimming 2 miles and swim, just like they did back at the NCDUs, the Scout Raiders, World War II, underwater demolition teams. That's what we were meant to do, was to swim in enemy grounds, clear obstacles, set mines, swim back. And the 2 mile ocean swim, which that was, we do that twice a week, and that's heritage. And so you got this old flare belt on there. You got these old Scuba Pro fins. You got your round mask. You got your old duck suit, UDT life vest, and a wetsuit on that no one uses anymore except for SEAL. They only make them for SEAL training. No one in the right mind is going to use this antiquated stuff. And a dive knife with you. And that was heritage. This training hasn't changed in 50 years. And I did it in a harsh contrasting black and white. I mean, my curve, I did the curve tool with that and went like this. And so, but that's what I wanted it to show. I wanted it to, this is our heritage. And so, but the other one, which you said, it was exactly Uncommon Grit. I'm like, I would have loved to put that one on the front, but I thought the one that I chose made a lot more sense. But that photo is, it's exactly that's Uncommon Grit right there.
And the cover picture, I think the reason it works for the cover also is it's the success, right? It's not showing that some of these guys may not make it and may ring that bell. It's these guys are walking strong. And I think that comes across. I've got one question I need to ask you, because
yes,
again, I'm not going to blow air up. You don't need that at this point in your career. You're an amazing photographer. I'm curious, one photographer that inspires you. Who's a photographer people should know about? If you were to pick one.
Oh, jeez. Wow. You know what? I just don't have a long list of
I mean, you mentioned Joe McNally earlier.
Right here because and it's funny we talked about that because I went to the Photoshop convention in 2008 in Vegas, and he was a keynote when I really was getting into photography. So, maybe we get done this COVID, maybe I can go to like the Photoshop World Conference and be a keynote and talk about this whole story, which would be fun. But
oh, you know what? Scott Kelby, I'm gonna mention this to Scott Kelby because you need to be on his show, The Grid, or on one of his photography things that he's doing online now. Because seriously, Darren, your work to me is amazing. And again, people say it, but with the deepest meaning I could give, thank you so much for what you do, what your fellow, military do, and for your service. It is much appreciated. The book itself is Uncommon Grit. The website is uncommongritbook.com, right?
That is correct. Yep. uncommonbook.com. And my Instagram is McTeams3842. So
okay.
That's
and then LinkedIn, DM, or actually
quite the journey.
I'm sorry, say again the lag. I stepped on you. I apologize.
That's all right. That's right. Instagram is McTeams3843, McTeams, MCTEAMS 3842, and LinkedIn is D McBurnett. So
okay, and then
my
it's
website is
McBurnett.com. Okay.
Yep.
So everybody, you need to go check out Darren's work because this book, it's available everywhere, by the way. You can get it on Amazon and everything, but if you go to the website, uncommongritbook.com, and again, uncommon grit like you think it would be spelled, they've got links to everywhere that you can buy it. And don't just look at the pictures. Some of the text in there telling, like setting it up really is, I think, what makes the book, even though it's in many ways a photo book. So make sure you go check it out. And Darren, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate your time. I kept you long, but I really appreciate it, man.
No, I appreciate it. I really, but I have to, if you let me go back to finish your last question, I think if I have to go through everything, Frans Lanting was probably the guy that I thought really nailed the head, was really one of my favorites to look at, to be honest with you. I had to really dig
Frans
deep and I
Lansing.
remember,
what does he photograph?
Also one last, it was wildlife.
Okay.
Way back in the day. I don't know if you, it was just one of those guys. But here's the thing about Scott Kelby. That was the first book that I actually bought, was a Scott Kelby book back in 2007. Very first one for understanding digital photography. The small little book. That was my guide for about a year.
and in those days, really everybody, his Photoshop
so if you
books,
talk to him, thank him.
I definitely will. Yeah. I'm serious. I'm going to email him and the guy that does his blog right after this because they've got to know about you. It's just absolutely amazing. Again, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. It was fun to meet you too. I love your book.
Yeah.
Please thank Linda for me too.
Thank you so much. It's an honor, man. Yes, I will. Linda, yeah, she's out there, and so she's getting it out there, and it's a privilege. It's an honor. I've been doing photography for a long time, and this is, it's exciting. It's exciting to talk about photography, and it's everything that I learned. That's about being a Navy SEAL. It's like, hey, if you're going to do something, then be good at it. Don't half-ass it. Just be good at it.
Right.
If you're doing photos and they're not good, well, then freaking delete them, okay? Or just do something. Just don't put crap out there. It's like, for me, it's like, hey, this is the best that I can do. This is it. It's like, I can't do any better. So here, So if it sucks, that's my mindset. If it sucks, it's like, well, I can't do any better. But I just did the best of everything that I learned in photography, everything that I did. All this, this is it, And so if you're going to do that one thing, make sure you do it right. Wow. So I hope to think that I did it right, and I'm glad everybody loved it.
You sir did it right. It is absolutely amazing. So again, make sure you go check out the book. Darren's book is Uncommon Grit, uncommongritbook.com. Website is McBurnett. There's 2 T's in Burnett, 1 R, 2 T's. McTeams 3842, and then LinkedIn is D McBurnett. Go look Darren up or McB as you're known, because seriously, God, you're good. I do want to remind everybody, I do the shows with Don Komarechka. We've got a great one coming up in November. If you are not aware of that, you can sign up, or sign up's the wrong term. If you go sign up for a Flickr account, it can be free or paid, and then join the Behind the Shot Flickr group, you could submit images there to be critiqued. You must tag them with BTS Critique. I don't want to grab a picture and critique it if you're just trying to participate in community. So tag it with BTS Critique with a Flickr tag in the Flickr group Behind the Shot. We use those, and we do them about once a month right now. Don Komarechka, the macro genius, the mad scientist, and I. We're having a lot of fun with that, so make sure you go check that out. And to everybody, thanks as always for watching. My name is Steve Brazill. If you want to reach out to me, the best way is the website, stevebrazill.com. It's like the country Brazil, but 2 L's. The website for the podcast is behindtheshot.tv. You can find all the links to subscribe there. You can find notes about this show there, as well as a small gallery of Darren's work. You can find me on YouTube at Behind the Shot as well. And this has just been a wonderful show. Again, thanks to my guest, Darren McBurnett. It was absolutely wonderful to meet him. And to everybody, thanks as well for subscribing on YouTube and watching the show. I appreciate it. We will see you on the next show.